Howard Hughes was the embodiment of the American dream of wealth, a bright, explosive, but charming billionaire whose mind was constantly boiling with new ideas. It was about him that the movie The Aviator was shot with DiCaprio. Hughes owned a huge fortune, but in the last years of his life, his own words came true. Money cannot buy happiness. Seclusion and morbid cleanliness became an obsession of the elderly Hughes. While cleaning his hands, he rubbed them until they bled, and each item was served to him wrapped in several napkins. He required his subordinates to change their underwear several times a day, although he had not changed his underwear for months. In addition, he had not cut his nails and hair for years. When Howard was brought to Houston in 1976, already dead, no one recognized him, and they had to take fingerprints. But how did it happen that America's richest and most arrogant businessman turned into a crazy neurotic? And who is to blame for this? Howard Robert Hughes Jr., known as Sonny, was born on September 24, 1905 in Humble, Texas. His father is a short-tempered choleric. Bo Hughes figured out the main pain of oil explorers who lost a lot of money on poor drilling equipment. After many months of intensive testing, Bo, with the help of engineer Walter Sharp, designed and patented a drill, the idea of which was suggested to him by cubes of oil with notches. The invention made a splash among oil workers and brought the Hughes family a huge fortune. In 1909, Bo founded the Sharp Hughes Tool Company. Howard Allen's mother was a strange person. On the one hand, she is overprotective and very sensitive. On the other hand, she is prone to hysteria and hypochondria. Allen was afraid of cats, mosquitoes, beetles, flies, and cockroaches. In those days, polio was a common occurrence among young people. Sonny's mother constantly pestered doctors with requests to perform tests on her son. Eventually, she infected the child with her obsessions. After her death, Howard began to visit doctors more often, looking for various diseases. In the last years of his life, his hypochondria turned into a real madness. Sonny was a shy and neurotic young man, but over time he learned to control his weaknesses and show true masculine traits. Since childhood, Hughes Jr. has been distinguished by great ingenuity and technical abilities. Taking care of his health, Howard never smoked, drank coffee or alcohol, although the supply of strong drinks for guests in his residences was impressive. Due to his hearing loss, he always spoke very loudly, which made his tone overbearing. After the death of his parents, the 19-year-old Howard inherited a huge fortune, which he was to multiply with great success in the following years. He single-handedly ran the Hughes Tool Company, which produced mining drills and made huge profits. To ensure his complete independence in business, he almost forcibly bought out all the shares that other family members inherited after his father's death. A couple of games of golf with the referee and the case was successfully completed. Thus, he became an entrepreneur in full control of his rapidly growing fortune. Hughes could afford to buy everything and everyone. He even once said, "Every man has a price, otherwise a guy like me couldn't exist." Hughes bought the favor of corrupt politicians, judges, state and federal officials, easily winning all kinds of government tenders. He often quoted a saying attributed to Alexander the Great that a donkey loaded with gold will conquer any fortress. Entering the corrupt world of Hollywood opened up endless possibilities for Hughes to choose partners of both sexes. His marriage to Elle Rice, concluded on July 4, 1925, was entirely a facade. Sonny beat his wife and publicly humiliated her. 4 years later, the couple divorced. Hughes' second and last wife was Jane Peters, who married him in 1957. The movie world has completely taken over Sonny's mind. He was interested in everything from the camera, which he was then able to disassemble and assemble, to the construction of street decorations. When he became a serious producer and even a director, he very often interfered in all stages of film production. The years 1953 to 1954 were a dark and shameful page in the life of producer Howard Hughes. On May 19, 1953, a nuclear test was conducted in uninhabited Yucca Flat, Nevada. However, the Atomic Energy Commission did not take care of the evacuation of the city 240 kilometers away, where radioactive dust got into. In early 1954, Hughes sent his film group there to shoot the film The Conqueror about Genghis Khan. This film was an artistic failure. But the most terrible thing is that almost half of the film crew fell ill with radiation sickness and died very quickly from cancer. In addition, 60 tons of contaminated sand, which mimicked the Los Angeles Gobi Desert, were sent to Hollywood, where scenes for the film were filmed in pavilions. He changed partners like gloves. Almost all the movie stars of that time passed through his bed. One of them, Rita Hayworth, notified Hughes that she was pregnant with his child, but hating children, Howard demanded that she terminate the pregnancy. A similar story happened with actress Terry Moore, but she refused to get rid of the pregnancy. Moore gave birth to a baby girl who died of sepsis 12 hours later. The only woman who never gave in to Hughes was Ava Gardner. He hated Frank Sinatra and hindered his career in every possible way because, in his opinion, he stole Ava from under his nose. Airplanes and flying have been his passion all his life. In 1938, Howard Hughes and his team flew from New York to Paris. The flight lasted 16 hours and 35 minutes, twice as long as the flight of Charles Lindbergh. In 1947, Howard Hughes planned, and with the help of Henry Kaiser, built the largest wooden Hughes A4 transport aircraft. It was an 8-engine air giant. The first and only flight was piloted by Howard Hughes himself. The aircraft never went into mass production. Hughes once said, "There is no man in the world that I cannot buy or destroy." In fact, he was a master of deception and intrigue, which he used always and everywhere, whether in the intimate or business sphere. For him, only his own interests and fortune were a priority. Hughes biographers agree that the billionaire had all the most important decision-makers in the Air Force Command in his pocket. In 1970, 6 years before his death, Howard Hughes looked like a shadow of a man. Although his daily diet was 2,000 calories, at 192 centimeters tall, he weighed 47 kilograms. Sonny was so weak that he was carried down the stairs on a stretcher, and when he stood still, he swayed on his feet. The author of a detailed biography of billionaire Charles Hyam set out to finally discover the root cause of Hughes' illnesses. When asked about this, an excellent Los Angeles-based diagnostician, Dr. Joseph Choi, briefly and definitively identified Hughes' disease: AIDS. The combination of symptoms fully confirms the diagnosis. Rapid weight loss, severe fever attacks, and chronically elevated body temperature with very low hemoglobin levels clearly indicate the destructive activity of the HIV virus in Hughes' body. He himself, experiencing panic fear of an unknown disease, stubbornly refused to do a blood test. In the 1960s and 1970s, the names HIV and AIDS did not yet exist. The traumatic fear of germs from childhood returned with a vengeance, and Hughes himself paranoidally tried to avoid the inevitable. In his sick imagination, fueled by fear of germs and radiation, the idea was born to wipe all things with towels and handkerchiefs. After going to the toilet, Sonny would sit next to the sink and wipe his hands with alcohol for hours until they bled. At the same time, he obsessively avoided contact with doctors. His diet consisted mainly of chocolate bars, peanuts, milk, and pears. One of the strangest obsessions was that the billionaire's associates had to collect his urine in jars and store it in the room where he stayed. The man who owned a fifth of Las Vegas in the last years of his life weighed 40 kilograms at the time of his death. His own words came true: "Money can't buy happiness." One of the richest and most influential people in the world died on April 5, 1976. His lifeless body was covered with uncut hair and beard. In 1980, his Hughes Aircraft and Hughes Helicopters businesses were sold for $5 billion.